Hello everyone, good afternoon. We are from Group 4 and today we are going to present about our discussion. The topic from our discussion tells about the present and informed approach. Before we start, I want to tell you about group members. There are Amanda Putri Setianingrum, Hana Nabilah Putri, Qoni Atuzzahra, Michael Stefanus, Aisah Dwi Krisnawati, Muhammad Alan Firdaus, Linda Wulanika, Rahmania Maulidiya, and me, Monika Astria Gultom, Merlina Dewi Khaerun Nisa, Septian Paradesa, and the last Muhammad Iqbal Priyatna. Okay, the first I want to tell you about introduction of the chapter. As we know, we have learned to be cautiously elected in making enlightened choices of teaching practice about second language and learning teaching. In the 1970s and early 1980s, there was a good hoopla about the designer method. Many people are pursuing new methods, but we didn't need a new method. We needed instead to go on with business, unifying our approach to language teaching and designing effective tasks and techniques that were informed by the approach. And methods as a unified, cohesive, finite set of design features is now given only minor attention. The profession has at last reached of the point of minority where we recognize that the diversity of language learner. Okay, the next presentation will be explained by my friends.
Yeah, I will explain about an enlightened eclectic approach. It should be clear from the foregoing that as enlightened eclectic teacher, you think in terms of a number of possible methodological options at your disposal for tailoring classes to particular context, that your approach or rationale for language learning and teaching therefore takes on great importance, and the interaction between approach and classroom practice is the key to dynamic teaching. And then approach is guided by a number of factors such as your own experience as a learner in classroom and whatever teaching experience you might already have had, classroom observation you have met, books you have read, and previous courses in the field.
Okay, now I will be discussing about list of focuses or potential choices in teaching language learners. You may feel you cannot describe your own approach to language learning and teaching if you have little experience in teaching, but this here is a selected list of potential choices you have in designing a lesson. On the basis of what you know so far about second language acquisition and the pedagogical process, think about which side of the continuum of possibilities you would generally lean toward, why you would rely on that way, and most importantly, what contextual variables might influence a change away from your general inclination. For example, here from the list, the first item asks you to choose between meaning and grammar for a focus. While you might lean toward meaning because you know that too much focus on the form could detract from communicative acquisition, particular classroom objectives and tasks might demand a focus on grammar. Number two, we also need to pay attention to the student's ability to learn, whether they are better at using analysis or intuition. Some learning topics may require a great deal of analysis to answer a problem, such as semantic and pragmatic learning, while learning like listening and speaking may require more intuition to practice. Number three, as a teacher, we have to let students know it is better for them to think directly in the L2 or use translation from L1. In speaking, many teachers demand students to think directly in the L2, while in writing, students are usually asked to use translation from L1 if they need to. And the next, some teachers also like to give rewards to their language learners because even only a simple reward they give, it could produce a sense of achievement among learners, which creates a positive learning environment, increasing their motivation. Now it is up to the teachers to choose whether to give immediate rewards or long-term rewards to their students. In the context of teaching and learning, immediate rewards tend to be given during small quizzes or learning in everyday classrooms, while long-term rewards are usually given in the form of trophies, certificates, etc. Usually, these rewards are given more for student achievements like TOEFL or being the most outstanding student in the class. Next, with the new language learners, teachers need to be tough and demanding or gentle and empathetic. In this situation, a teacher must really consider how they present the material to their new students because those are two things that are very important to give to language learners. A teacher somehow must be gentle yet demanding so that knowledge can be conveyed well. Other than that, it is important to be considered by a teacher whether feedback should be given frequently or infrequently. And the last one is that the teacher must consider the communicative class they conduct and should give special attention to whether to accuracy or fluency. Now, if you could choose an A or B for each, it indicates that you do indeed have intuitions about teaching and perhaps the beginning of an approach. And yeah, that is all from me. The next topic will be continued by the next presenter.
Okay, next is about communicative language teaching. But before we are talking about CLT, let's talk about what CLT is. So previously, we have just discussed about some methods that defined a century or more ago. And today, we are trying to providing the students with tools for generating new language when they leave the classroom. And we also trying to concern about how to facilitate lifelong language learning about the students, among the students. And all of this theoretical interest underlie what we can best describe as CLT. So CLT is a currently recognized approach that is a generally accepted norm in the field, and it is unified but broadly based and theoretically well-informed set of tenets about nature of language and of language learning and teaching. And next is about 6 interconnected characteristics of CLT will be described by my next partner.
Okay, there are 6 interconnected characteristics as a description of CLT. First, classroom goals are focused on all of the components, including grammatical, discourse, functional, social-linguistic, and strategic of communicative competence. Goals therefore must intertwine the organizational aspects of language with the pragmatic. Second, language techniques are designed to engage learners in the pragmatic, authentic, functional use of language for meaningful purpose. Organizational language form are not the central focus, but rather as aspects of language that enable the learner to accomplish those purposes. Third, fluency and accuracy are seen as complementary principles underlying communicative techniques. Fourth, students in a communicative class ultimately have to use the language productively and receptively in unreal classroom. Students are given opportunity to focus on learning process through an understanding of their own styles of learning through the development of appropriate for autonomy. And the role of the teacher as a guide, not an all-knowing best. Students are therefore encouraged to constantly communicate linguistic action with others. Next.
Okay, so the next one is the caveats. If you heard from the beginning section of CLT, CLT is perfectly makes sense, but there are some caveats on the communicative language teaching. There are over reliance on communication, CLT can sometimes lead to an overemphasis on communication at the expense of other important language skills, such as grammar and vocabulary. This can be results in learners who are fluent but lack accuracy or precision in their language use. Number two is limited focus on form because CLT prioritize communication. It may not give enough attention to the formal aspect of language, such as grammar rules and the sentence structures. Number three is teacher training. CLT requires teachers that are highly skilled at facilitating communication in the classroom. Number four is cultural Learners have shared cultural barriers. This may not always be the case, and as challenges, CLT can be challenging to assess, as it prioritizes communication over accuracy. This can make it difficult to evaluate learners for progress and provide feedback on their language skill. Overall, while CLT is valuable approach to language teaching, it is important to be aware of its limitation and potential challenges in implementation. Teachers and learners should use the method of judiciously and supplement it with other learning strategies as needed.
Okay, the next one is a comparison of the audiolingual method and communicative language teaching. So there are several things that distinguish between the audiolingual method and communicative language teaching. As an example, audiolingual method usually attend to structure and form more than meaning, while communicative language teaching meaning is paramount. Then audiolingual method language learning is learning structure, sound, or word, and while communicative language teaching language learning is learning to communicate in the yes to communicate in the audiolingual method. The grammatical explanation is voided, whereas communicative language teaching, any device that help the learners is accepted varying according to their age and etc. As I have explained several examples regarding the audiolingual method and CLT, we know that for excessive use of certain CLT features, engaging in real life and authentic language in class to the complete exclusion of potential helpful control exercise, grammar, pointers, and analytical tools, others, or stimulating the real world, but refraining from interrupting the ongoing flow of language, such as indirect approach to CLT only over the possibility of incidental learning without a specific focus on form, rules, and principle of language organization. A more effective application of CLT principle is manifested in a direct approach that careful sequences and structures tasks for learners and over optimal intervention to aid learner in developing strategies for acquisition, and also content centered or of course communicative. One way of looking at this term is that they are simply expressions for the last, but in language teaching and are relative meaningless. So the next is example by my friend.
Okay, the next is about the types of communicative language teaching. So the first is language-centered instruction. So language-centered instruction is the term that applies to specific technique. Learner-centered instruction is contrast with teaching centered because learner-centered instruction is help to give students sense of ownership of their learning, so it can increase their intrinsic motivation.
The learner-centered instruction is include some techniques. So the first technique is the technique that focusing on accounting learners' needs, style, and goals. And the second techniques is the technique that gives some control to students like group work and strategy training. And then the third technique is the technique that allowing student creativity and innovation. And then the last technique is technique that enhancing student sense of competence and self-worth. Next will be explained by my friends.
Right, so the next language teaching types is cooperative and collaborative. So there are two terms here. Let's go first with cooperative. So generally, the name is cooperative. It means like learning in group. So as my friend already explained to you, this method, this cooperative learning usually involves a learner-centered characteristic where they always focusing on accounting, giving some control to the students. So generally it's a work in group where some students will work in pairs or work with two or more students, and they will come and share information as well as comes to each other's aid. However, this cooperative learning has some advantages as well as disadvantages. So for the advantages, first, it helps promoting intrinsic motivation, and then it heightens self-esteem for the learners, creating caring and altruistic relationship between the learners, and then help them lowering the anxiety and the prejudice. And for the disadvantages of cooperative learning, there are some problems such as varied cultural expectation, and then the students or the learners have their own style, their individual learning style, and the last one is about the personality of the learners. And then collaborative learning here, so it is quite different than cooperative, where they work in group with the students in this with the same specialty, where in the collaborative here in the classroom, the students will work with the teachers or advanced peers in order to pursue goals and objectives. So the learners will engage with more capable others like teachers or advanced peers or etc. who provide them with assistance and guidance. And then about the interactive learning will be explained by my friend.
Okay, so I will explain about interactive learning. Basically, communicative competence is essentially interactive nature of communication. Intended message involve both speaker production and listener perception. The second one is the aim is to create opportunities for genuine interaction in a classroom. Interactive classes will be most likely first by groups or group work, performing classroom talks, practicing communication through actual conversation. Learners' communication abilities would be enhanced through interactive learning. And then the next topic will be explained by my friend.
Next, we move on to whole language education. So here, whole language is a term that is used to describe cooperative learning, participatory learning, student-centered learning, focus on the community of learners, focus on the social nature of language, and etc. So it has really wide meaning because it covers the whole language education. And then there are two interconnected concepts that is used in this whole language education. The first one is concept that language is not the sum of its many dissectible and discrete parts. And then the second one, whole language is a perspective anchored in a vision of equitable, democratic, and diverse society. And then the next will be explained by my friend.
All right, the next is about the content-based instruction. So the first, we have to know what is the definition of content-based instruction. So according to Brinton, Snow, and Wesh, it's the integration of content learning with language teaching aims. So it's more specifically, it refers to the concurrent study of language and subject matter with the form and sequence of language presentation dictated by content materials. And such as an approach contrasts sharply with many practices in which language skills are taught virtually in isolation from substance content. And the second is when language is a medium for conveying interesting and relevant information content to learner, it's then learner are pointed toward matter of instinct concern. Language takes on its appropriate role as a vehicle for accomplishing a set of content goals. And the last is increase instinct, motivation, and empowerment through content-based classroom. So actually, a recent search of research material on CBA has given us new opportunity and challenge. So this is the content-based classroom may yield an increase instinct, motivation, and empowerment since students are focused on subject matter that is important to their lives. Students are point beyond transient extinct factor like grades and testing to their own competence and autonomy as intelligent individual capable. And the challenge range from a demand for a whole new genre of textbook and other material to the training of language teacher to teach the concept and skill of various discipline, profession, and occupation, or to teach in term across the discipline. And next will be explained by my friends.
The last one is task-based instruction. So for this part, Peter Skehan stated that concept of task seems to capture the essentials. And then he defines the task as an activity in which the first one is meaning is primary. The second one is there is some communication problem to solve. There is some sort of relationship to compare between real world and activities. Task completion has some priority, and the last one is the assessment of the task is in terms of outcome. So a task is really a special form of technique. In some cases, task and technique may be synonymous, like a problem-solving task or technique, a role-play task technique, for example. And in other cases, a task may be comprised of several techniques, for example, a problem-solving task that includes grammatical explanation, teacher-initiated questions, and specific turn-taking procedure. And tasks are usually bigger in their ultimate ends than techniques. That is all from our group. Thank you.